Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. We are on chapter 32. The book only has 33 chapters. Look at us. We are almost finished. We will definitely get through all of chapter 32 today. The chapter 32 is called The Power of Love. After Tryon's failure to obtain an interview with Rena through Plato's connivance, he decided upon a different course of procedure. In a few days, her school term would be finished. He was not less desirous to see her, was indeed as much more eager as opposition would be likely to make a very young man who was accustomed to having his own way, and whose heart, as he had discovered, was more deeply and permanently involved than he had imagined. So he's like, I'm gonna do what I want to do because I'm a young man and my heart is involved, or because he's like, I'm white and male and I get to do what I feel like doing. I know that's ungenerous. I do. I recognize that, but I don't think it makes it less true in this situation. His present plan was to wait until the end of the school. Then, when Rena went to Clinton on the Saturday or Monday to draw her salary for the month, he would see her in the town, or if necessary, would follow her to Patesville. No power on earth should keep him from her long, but he had no desire to interfere in any way with the duty which she owed to others. Well, isn't that nice? Nothing can keep me from you, but I won't get in your way of doing what you need to do. When the school was over and her work completed, then he would have his innings. Writing letters was too unsatisfactory a method of communication. He must see her face to face. The first of his 3 days of waiting had passed, when, about 10 o'clock in the morning of the second day, which seemed very long in prospect, while driving along the road toward Clinton, he met Plato with a rabbit trap in his hand. Do any of you know what a rabbit trap looks like from the early 1900s? I don't. I feel like I'm going to have to Google that. I mean, maybe it looks just like a rabbit trap now. I don't know what a rabbit trap looks like. So if you know, post up for me. Well, Plato, he asked, why are you absent from the classic shades of the academy today? Howdy, Mass George. What was that you say? Why are you not at school today? Ain't got no teacher, Mass George. Teacher's gone. Gone! Exclaimed Tryon with a sudden leap of the heart. Gone where? What do you mean? Teacher got lost in the swamp night before last 'cause Plato weren't there to show her the way out in the woods. Elder Johnson found her with dogs and torches and fotch her home and put her to bed. No school yesterday. She was out in her head last night, and this morning she was gone. Gone where? They don't nobody nowhere, sir. Leaving Plato abruptly, Tryon hastened down the road toward Elder Johnson's cabin. This was no time to stand on punctilio. And this is why I like 19th century literature, because they use phrases like, this was no time to stand on punctilio. Uh, the girl had been lost in the woods in the storm, amid the thunder and lightning and the pouring rain. She was sick with fright and exposure, and he was the cause of it all. Bribery, corruption, and falsehood had brought punishment on their train, and the innocent had suffered while the guilty escaped. Let's take another look at this. She was sick with fright and exposure, and he was the cause of it all. I can't say he was the cause of it all. He was definitely part of the cause for sure. He had Plato bring her to the designated spot, and she saw him and she ran, but there was also Wayne was there also, and she saw Wayne and ran. So those two forces colliding prompted her to run. Was it a bad idea to run into the swamp? Absolutely, it was. So he has guilt for sure, but I can't say he was the cause of it all. Um, do we go back further to find more onus on him? Maybe he was the cause of Rena Going back home, well, Rena's mother being sick was the cause of Rena going back home. He was the cause of Rena staying home when he saw her back in Patesville. He is complicit. A lot of the fault is his, but I can't say all of it. I can't say all of it is his. Then it goes on bribery, corruption, and falsehood. He definitely had bribery, corruption, and falsehood, had brought punishment on their train, and the innocent, assuming that is Rena, had suffered, while the guilty, assuming him, escaped. Can she be innocent if she's Black? Like, that's not something that was available to her, innocence. He was not pleading innocence for her when he was talking about how duplicitous she was when she tricked him into thinking she was a white woman. There was no innocence for her then. What has changed that he's calling her innocent? And he is guilty, absolutely, of bribery, corruption, and falsehood, but is he guilty because he's white? Is there guilt associated with whiteness? Does he feel guilt with whiteness? Is she, like, what is she innocent of? She's innocent despite having been born Black. He's guilty despite having been born white. Like, I'm wrestling. I'm wrestling with this. But let's keep reading. So he, and the he here is Tryon, he must learn at once what had become of her. Reaching Elder Johnson's house, he drew up by the front fence and gave the customary helloa, which summoned a woman to the door. Good morning, he said, nodding unconsciously with the careless politeness of a gentleman to his inferiors. Oh, good morning, he said, nodding unconsciously with the careless politeness of a gentleman to his inferiors. Oh my gosh. I'm Mr. Tryon. I have come to inquire about the sick teacher. Why, sir, the woman replied respectfully. She got lost in the woods night before last, and she was out in her mind most of the time yesterday. Last night she must have got out of her bed and run away. We and everybody was sound asleep, for this morning she was gone, and none of us knows where she is. Has any search been made for her? Yes, sir. My husband and the children has been hunting round all the morning, and she's gone to borrow a hoss. Oh, and he's gone to borrow a hoss now to go further. But Lord knows they ain't no telling where she'd go, less'n she got her mind back since she left. Tryon's mare was in good condition. He had money in his pocket and nothing to interfere with his movements. He has a horse, he has money, and he has the privilege of being white and male, because therefore nothing will interfere with his movements. He needs that dual privilege of whiteness and maleness for nothing to interfere with his movements. If he were a white female, lots of things would interfere with his movements. If he were a male of any other race, lots of things would interfere with his movements. But as it was, he had a horse, he had money, and nothing to interfere with his movements. He set out immediately on the road to Patesville, keeping a lookout by the roadside and stopping each person he met to inquire if a young woman, apparently ill, had been seen traveling along the road on foot. No one had met such a traveler. When he had gone 2 or 3 miles, he drove through a shallow branch that crossed the road. The splashing of the horse's hoofs in the water prevented him from hearing a low groan that came from the woods by the roadside. Oh no, so many near misses. No. He drove on, making inquiries or inquiries, I think you can say it both ways, at each farmhouse and of every person whom he encountered. So I do wonder, the people who he stops, do they assume the woman that he is looking for is a white woman since he is white? And that's what people assume Rena is anyway? Or is he saying there's a Black woman? Because then if they saw Rena, they would be like, that wasn't who he was talking about. Maybe he just said woman. I mean, that's what it seems, but you never know. And have you ever wondered why the plural of hoofs isn't hooves? Is it hooves? This says hoofs. I get like roof and roofs, hoof and hooves. Like what? Anyway, I'll keep reading. He drove on, making inquiries at each farmhouse and of every person whom he encountered. Shortly after crossing the branch, he met a young Negro with a cartload of tubs and buckets and piggins. I have no idea what a piggin is, and asked him if he had seen on the road a white young woman with dark eyes and hair, apparently sick or demented. Well, that answered my question. He asked, at least to black people, he's asking if they had seen a white young woman. And if this person is carrying tubs and buckets, my guess is this person is a cooper. Coopers were barrel and casket makers. Um, just a little extra for our entertainment today. The young man answered in the negative, and Tryon pushed forward anxiously. At noon, he stopped at a farmhouse and swallowed a hasty meal. That's nice that somebody fed him. His inquiries here elicited no information, and he was just leaving when a young man came in late to dinner and stated, in response to the usual question, that he had met some 2 hours before a young woman who answered Tryon's description on the Lillington Road, which crossed the main road to Patesville a short distance beyond the farmhouse. He had spoken to the woman. At first, she had paid no heed to his question. When addressed a second time, she had answered in a rambling and disconnected way, which indicated to his mind that there was something wrong with her. And then he just left and just went home. He didn't be like, "Can I help you? Can I get somebody for you?" I mean, is anybody else conjuring up images of the Good Samaritan, the story from the Bible where there was a man um, going down from Jerusalem to Jericho? I think I got that right. I know he's going down. He's leaving where the temple was and going down. I believe that he was leaving from Jerusalem to Jericho. And a priest, and he was set upon by thieves and beat and left for dead. And a priest saw him and crossed the road and walked by him. And a Levite, which is a priest's helper, walked by him. But a Samaritan stopped and helped him. And Israelites and Samaritans were enemies, but the Samaritan helped. He wasn't the first person who saw him, and he was most likely the least likely person you would think who would help him, but he helped. So I'm conjuring up images of the Good Samaritan story as I'm reading this, and I don't know that we're not supposed to. Perhaps we are. Okay, so Tryon thanked his informant and hastened to the Lillington Road. Stopping as before to inquire, he followed the woman for several hours, each mile of the distance taking him farther away from Patesville. From time to time, he heard of the woman. Toward nightfall, he found her. She was white enough, with the sallowness of the sandhill poor white. She was still young, perhaps, but poverty and a hard life made her look older than she ought. She was not fair, and she was not Rena. When Tryon came up to her, she was sitting on the doorsill of a miserable cabin and held in her hand a bottle, the contents of which had never paid any revenue tax. She had walked 20 miles that day and had beguiled the tedium of the journey by occasional potations, which probably accounted for the incoherency of speech which several of those who met her had observed. She was drunk as a skunk. When Tryon drew near, she tendered him the bottle with tipsy cordiality. He turned in disgust and retraced his steps to the Patesville road, which he did not reach until nightfall. As it was too dark to prosecute the search with any chance of success, he secured lodging for the night, intending to resume his quest early in the morning. That is chapter 32 of The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. We've only got one chapter left to go. I don't think we're going to finish it in one reading, but we might. You never know. So I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda. Until next time.